Hello, everybody. Welcome to Pragna's channel. We had to take a bit of a break because I was not feeling very well for a couple of weeks, and my voice was not fully functional either because I had some kind of a very strange strain of flu which like knocked out my voice. But obviously, I survived it, and hopefully stronger for that. And hopefully, we'll have a continuous series of streams starting this weekend. So, without delaying much, let's get to the topic of today's stream. Today's stream is called the today's book that we are going to read is a book called Sophie's World. Right? Um, it is written by this wonderful person named Jostein Gaarder or Jostein Gaarder. The core purport, the core aspect of this book, or what this book tries to do, is to give a 101 introduction. You can think of it as a Western philosophy 101 course, right? The very basic course in Western philosophy. It goes through history of the Western philosophy. What are the key milestones? Who are the key people that actually changed the face of the Western philosophy? But it does so in a very nice and unique way. It is through the lens of a 14-year-old girl, uh, high school girl, or even middle to high school girl named Sophie, right? So uh, it's going to be a very interesting journey, and we are going to read and have a discussion about this book. And to join us today on the first session, so this is the quick intro about the book. And today we have been joined by uh, lawyer Shravan Kumar Garu, SK Garu, and Daoji, who has been a very enthusiastic and regular participant in these panels. So, and this book itself, we picked up for reading after our previous book, Animal Farm by George Orwell, upon the recommendation of Daoji, who is a teacher himself. He is preparing for his BEd, and he is a social sciences teacher. And I'd like to give him the opportunity to say a few words about this book, and then we'll get going on the reading itself, basically. And welcome to all the panelists. Dauji, welcome. Please, uh, and the stage is
Yes,
yours.
Mr. Karan. Thank you, Vishnu. So, about the book, uh, as Vishnu told, I am a teacher. So, I teach students about society, world, views. So, here, like philosophy is part of all these things. When somebody asks questions, if they know or they understand a view in philosophy, they would understand it greatly. So the class 9, 10, 11, 12, where they shape their future. So I would like to introduce them with this book, like Sophie's World, because it gives you it's a basic book about philosophy, but it told you that there is no book about philosophy. Philosophy is all about to ask questions, and this book help you to identify the questions. That's why I love this book, because as my teacher also told me that there is no answer in this world that you can get in the field of philosophy. There's only questions. So you need to do better in questioning. Like at the age of 20 your question would be normal, or if you read and understand much, then your question will be better and better and better. So that's why I recommend this book, because now what you ask yourself, or after reading this book, what will you ask to yourself? They will be like, their dynamics will be different. So I hope well for it, and let's read it.
All right. So, with that said, um, I don't know, Daoji went on mute. I assume that he's done. So,
Yes.
yeah, thank you. Thanks, Daoji. Thank you very much. So, I think he very eloquently put it. In philosophy, the focus is more on the question, right? What are the questions that are driving your thought process and are shaping your view of the world, basically, right? And to a certain extent, this is also very interesting way to look at things, right? Everybody is looking out for answers. I'm looking for answers, right? That's what everybody says. Most people, right? But the philosopher says, I'm looking for the next appropriate question to ask so that I can understand the world better, right? In a way, it is very similar to the Advaita philosophy, which is everybody is looking for some kind of an external entity, looking for God outside themselves. Advaita turns the tables and says, no, don't look outside, look internally, right? Ask yourself the question who you are, basically. So it turns the focus not towards the outside world, but it focuses on the person, on the observed world, basically, right? And that is what is unique about Advaita. That is what is unique about philosophy. It focuses on the question, not necessarily on the answer. So, with that said, let's jump straight into the book called Sophie's World, which is a Western Philosophy 101 introduction, and it is written by Jostein Gaarder. All right. So, chapter one, the Garden of Eden. That is the title. So, here in this book, every title below it has a bit of a description, right? It says, at some point, something must have come from nothing. And look at the line itself. As soon as I opened the book, the first time I saw this line, I fell in love with this book, basically, right? And this is one of the core fundamental questions that every human being at some point is going to face in his or her journey, right? It says at some point something must have come from nothing. Okay, now let's enter Sophie's world. Sophie Amundsen was on her way home from school. She had walked the first part of the way home with Joanna. They had been discussing robots. Joanna thought the human brain was like an advanced computer. Sophie was not certain she agreed. Surely a person was more than a piece of hardware? Question mark. When they got to the supermarket, they went their separate ways. Sophie lived on the outskirts of a sprawling suburb and had almost twice as far to school as Joanna. So Sophie had a lot more time to think about things as she walked home from school. There were no other houses beyond her garden, which made it seem as if her house lay at the end of the world. So her house was opening up into some kind of a open space or wilderness, right? So when you're at the end of a community or when you're at the end of a suburb or a division, a lot of times you'll see that your garden borders some kind of an open ground, basically, right? So she thought it was the end of the world. This is where the woods began. She turned the corner into Clover Close. At the end of the road, Clover Close must be some kind of a street. At the end of the road, there was a sharp bend known as Captain's Bend. People seldom went that way except on the weekend. It was early May, so like well into the springtime. In some of the gardens, the fruit trees were encircled with dense clusters of daffodils, basically. Right? Daffodils are flowers that usually bloom in the spring. The birches were already in pale green leaf. So spring was in full bloom. It was extraordinary how everything burst forth at this time of the year. What made this great mass of green vegetation come welling up from the dead earth as soon as it got warm and the last traces of snow disappeared? So she's wondering. So questions basically, right? As Sophie opened her garden gate, she looked in the mailbox. There was usually a lot of junk mail and a few big envelopes for her mother, a pile to dump on the kitchen table before she went up to her room to start her homework. So Sophie was a very conscientious kid who did her chores in the house as well as made sure that she was doing her homework when she got home. From time to time, there would be a few letters from the bank for her father, but he was not a normal father. Sophie's father was the captain of a big oil tanker and was away for most of the year. So he would go on tours, or once the ship leaves the uh, 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 shores, it takes a long time for it to return, basically. So he was a sailor and a captain, no less. During the few weeks at a time when he was at home, he would shuffle around the house, making it nice and cozy for Sophie and her mother. So he was a very good father. He would keep the home clean for Sophie and her mother to have a convenient and happy life. But when he was at sea, he could seem very distant. So he was too busy when he was at sea. There was only one letter in the mailbox today, and it was for Sophie. So, very surprisingly, neither was it a bank letter for her father, nor was it a bunch of junk mail, nor was it for her mother. It was for Sophie, actually. Right? The white envelope read Sophie Amundsen, 3 Clover Close. That was all. It did not say who it was from. There was no stamp on it either. So, somebody had put a letter in her mailbox, apparently. As soon as Sophie had closed the gate behind her, she opened the envelope. It contained only a slip of paper, no bigger than the envelope. It read, who are you? Right? With a question mark at the end of it. So there was a slip of paper no bigger than the envelope. So there was only just one slip of paper. And what was written on the paper? Who are you? Nothing else. Only the three words written by hand and followed by a large question mark. She looked at the envelope again. The letter was definitely for her. Who could have dropped it in the mailbox? Sophie let herself quickly into the red house. As always, her cat, Sherekan, managed to slink out of the bushes, jump onto the front step, and slip in through the door before she closed it behind her. Cats do this all the time, right? Whenever Sophie's mother was in a bad mood, she would call the house they lived in a menagerie. A menagerie was a collection of animals. Sophie certainly had one and was quite happy with it. So obviously the mom was, when she used to get upset, she used to get upset with the cat as well, basically, right? So what all animals were there in the house? It had begun with the three goldfish, Gold Top, Red Riding Hood, and Blackjack. So Sophie had names for the fish as well. Next, she got two budge budgeriggers called Smith and Smule. Then Govinda the tortoise, and finally the marmalade cat Sherekan. They all had been given to her to make up for the fact that her mother never got home from work until late in the afternoon, and her father was always so much sailing all over the world, basically. Okay, so that she would not feel lonely. Omkaram garu, namaste andi. So that the girl would not feel lonely, the parents had got her a few pets. Sophie slung her school bag on the floor and put a bowl of cat food out for Sherekan. Then she sat down on a kitchen stool with the mysterious letter in her hand. Who are you? She had no idea. She was Sophie Amundsen, of course, but who was that? She had not really figured that out yet. What if she had been given a different name? Annie Knudsen, for instance, or Anne Knudsen. Would she then have been someone else? So is it in the name? That's what she's wondering. That's where she's starting to analyze or question. She suddenly remembered that dad had originally wanted her to be called Lily Moore. Sophie tried to imagine herself shaking hands and introducing herself as Lily Moore Amundsen, but it seemed all wrong. It was someone else who kept introducing herself. She jumped up and went into the bathroom with the strange letter in her hand. She stood in front of the mirror and stared into her own eyes. I am Sophie Amundsen, she said. So just pay attention to how through the eyes of this girl, the author is slowly introducing what people typically go through when they start asking these questions, basically, right? So you stand in front of the mirror and wonder, okay, this is who you are really? Is that it? Right? The girl in the mirror did not react with as much as a twitch. Whatever Sophie did, she did exactly the same. Sophie tried to beat her reflection to it with a lightning movement, but the other girl was just as fast, right? So she was wondering if there is any lag between what appears in the mirror and what she was doing, but apparently the mirror was able to replicate exactly what she was doing. Who are you? Sophie asked. Obviously, she asked the mirror. She received no response to this either, but felt a momentary confusion as to whether it was she or her reflection who had asked the question. Wonderful. So, SK Garu, whenever and if you want to read, just interrupt me and then you can pick it up.
Sure, Andy. I'll take it.
Okay. So, who are you? Is where, and then you can start with Sophie pressed her index finger.
Okay, yeah. Sophie, okay, I'm bad with some pronunciations and I might not know meanings of few words. Help me there, Vishwagaru.
No problem. I'll be here.
Sophie pressed her index finger to the nose in the mirror and said, "You are me." As she got no answers to this, she turned the sentence around and said, "I am you." Sophie Amundsen was often dissatisfied with her appearance. She was frequently told that she had beautiful almond shaped eyes, but that was probably just something people said because her nose was too small and her mouth was a bit too big, and her ears were much too close to her eyes. Worst of all was her straight hair, which it was impossible to do anything with. Sometimes her father would stroke her hair and call her the girl with the flaxen hair, after a piece of music by Claude Debussy. It was all right for him. He was not condemned to living with the straight dark hair. Neither mousse nor styling gel had the slightest effect on Sophie's hair. Sometimes she thought that she was so ugly that she wondered if she was malformed at birth. Her mother always went on about her difficult labor, but was that really what determined how you looked? Wasn't it odd that know she didn't know who she was? And wasn't it unreasonable that she hadn't been allowed to have any say in what she would look like? Her looks had just been dumped on her. She could choose her own friends, but she certainly hadn't chosen herself. She had not even chosen to be a human being. What was a human being? Sophie looked up at the girl in the mirror again. "I think I'll go upstairs and do my biology homework," she said, almost apologetically. Once she was out in the hall, she thought, "No, I would rather go out in the garden." So she goes out, I guess. "Kitty, kitty, kitty." Sophie chased the cat out onto the doorstep and closed the front door behind her. As she stood outside on the gravel path with the mysterious letter in her hand, the strangest feeling came over her. She felt like a doll that had suddenly been brought to life by the wave of a magic wand. Wasn't it extraordinary to be in the world right now, wandering around in a wonderful adventure? Sherekan, oh, the cat, sprang lightly across the gravel and slid into a dense clump of red currant bushes. A live cat, vibrant with energy from its white whiskers to the twitching tail at the end of its sleek body. It was here in the garden too, but hardly aware of it in the same way as Sophie. As Sophie started to think about being alive, she began to realize that she would not be alive forever. "I am in the world now," she thought, "but one day I shall be gone." Was there a life after death? This was another question the cat was blissfully unaware of. It was not long since Sophie's grandmother had died. For more than 6 months, Sophie had missed her every single day. How unfair that life had to end. Sophie stood on the gravel path thinking. She tried to think extra hard about being alive so as to forget that she would not be alive forever. But it was impossible. As soon as she concentrated on being alive now, the thought of dying also came into her mind. The same thing happened the other way around. Only by conjuring up an intense feeling of one day being dead could she appreciate how terribly good it was to be alive. It was like two sides of a coin that she kept turning over and over. And the bigger and clearer one side of the coin became, the bigger and clearer the other side became too. You can't experience being alive without realizing that you have to die, she thought. But it's just as impossible to realize you have to die without thinking how incredibly amazing it is to be alive. Sophie remembered Granny saying something like that the day the doctor told her she was ill. "I never realized how rich life was until now," she said. "How tragic that most people had to get ill before they understood what a gift it was to be alive. Or else they had to find a mysterious letter in the mailbox. Perhaps she should go and see if any more letters had arrived." Sophie hurried to the gate and looked inside the green mailbox. She was startled to find that it contained another white envelope, exactly like the first. But the mailbox had definitely been empty when she took the first envelope. This envelope had her name on it as well. She tore it open and fished out a note the same size as the first one. Okay. It says, "Where does the world come from?" With a question mark. "I don't know," Sophie thought. Surely nobody really knows. And yet, Sophie thought it was a fair question. For the first time in her life, she felt it wasn't right to live in the world without at least inquiring where it came from. The mysterious letters had made Sophie's head spin. She decided to go and sit in the den. The den was Sophie's top secret hiding place. It was where she went when she was terribly angry, terribly miserable, or terribly happy. Today she was simply confused. Okay. The red house was surrounded by a large garden with lots of flower beds, fruit bushes, fruit trees of different kinds, a spacious lawn with a glider, and a little gazebo that Grandad had built for Granny when she lost her first child a few weeks after it was born. The child's name was Mary. On her gravestone were the words
Murray, and it's pronounced Murray.
Marie. Okay.
Yeah.
The child's name was Marie. On her gravestone were the words, Little Marie to us came, greeted us, and left again. Down in a corner of the garden, behind all the raspberry bushes, was a dense thicket where neither flowers nor berries would grow. Actually, it was an old hedge that had once marked the boundaries to the woods, but because nobody had trimmed it for the last 20 years, it had grown into a tangled and impenetrable mass. Granny used to say the hedge made it harder for the foxes to take the chickens during the war when the chickens had free range of the garden. To everyone but Sophie, the old hedge was just as useless as the rabbit hutches at the other end of the garden. But that was only because they hadn't discovered Sophie's secret. Sophie had known about the little hole in the hedge for as long as she could remember. When she crawled through it, she came into a large cavity between the bushes. It was like a little house. She knew nobody would find her there. Clutching the two envelopes in her hand, Sophie ran through the garden, crouched down all fours, and wormed her way through the hedge. The den was almost high enough for her to stand upright, but today she sat down on a clump of gnarled roots.
G silent. Nal the roots.
Gnarled. Okay. Meaning?
నాయింగ్ అంటే ఇట్లా నవలడం అండి. ఈ దురద పుట్టినప్పుడు నవ్వులుతా అని. ఇట్స్ కాల్డ్ నాయింగ్.
Yeah, I'll put the meaning in the here it says knobbly, rough and twisted for the roots basically.
ఓ ఉండలు కట్టేసినట్టు చుట్టుకుపోయి.
Yeah, basically it's a
In
very rough
Hindi it means teda meda.
teda veda. Okay.
Yes.
Love it. Yeah, I
Hmm.
just put it in the chat, the meaning. Please go ahead.
Okay. From there, she could look out through tiny peepholes between the twigs and leaves. Although none of the holes was bigger than a small coin, she had a good view of the whole garden. When she was little, she used to think it was fun to watch her mother and father searching for her among the trees. Sophie had always thought the garden was a world of its own. Each time she heard about the Garden of Eden in the Bible, it reminded her of sitting here in the den surveying her own little paradise. Where does the world come from? So, the question in the second envelope. Okay. She hadn't the faintest idea. Sophie knew that the world was only a small planet in space, but where did space come from? It was impossible. No. Where did the space come from? Okay. It was possible that space had always existed, in which case she would not also need to figure out where it came from. But could anything have always existed? Something deep down inside her protested at the idea. Surely everything that exists must have had a beginning. So, space must sometime have been created out of something else. But if space had come from something else, then that something else must also have come from something. Sophie felt she was only differing the problem. At some point, something must have come from nothing. But was that possible? Wasn't that just impossible as the idea that the world has always existed? They had learned at school that God created the world. Sophie tried to console herself with the thought that it was probably the best solution to the whole problem. But then she started to think again. She could accept that God had created space. But what about God himself? Had he created himself out of nothing? Again, there was something deep down inside her that protested. Even though God could create all kinds of things, he could hardly create himself before he had a self to create with. So there was only one possibility left. God had always existed, but she had already rejected that possibility. Everything that existed had to have a beginning. Oh, drat. She opened the two envelopes again. Who are you? Where does the world come from? What annoying questions. And anyway, where did the letters come from? That was just as mysterious almost. Who had jolted Sophie out of her everyday existence and suddenly brought her face to face with the great riddles of the universe? For the third time, Sophie went to mailbox. The mailman had just delivered the day's mail. Sophie fished out a bulky pile of junk mail, periodicals, and a couple of letters for her mother. There was also a postcard of a tropical beach. She turned the card over. It had a Norwegian stamp on it and was postmarked UN Battalion. Could it be from Dad? But wasn't he in a completely different place? It wasn't his handwriting either. Sophie felt her pulse quicken a little as she saw who the postcard was addressed to. Hild Moller Nag, care of Sophie Amundsen, 3 Clover Close. The rest of the address was correct. The card read, Dear Hild, happy 15th birthday. As I'm sure you will understand, I want to give you a present that will help you grow. Forgive me for sending the card care of Sophie. It was the easiest way. Love from Dad. Sophie raced back to the house and into the kitchen. Her mind was in a turmoil. Who was this Hild, whose 15th
That is
birthday?
Hilda. Hilda.
Hilda. Okay.
Uh,
Okay. Who was this Hilda, whose 15th birthday was just a month before her own? Sophie got out the telephone book. There were a lot of people called Moller and quite a few called Nag. But there was nobody in the entire directory called Moller Nag. She examined the mysterious card again. No, it certainly seemed genuine enough. It had a stamp and a postmark. Why would a father send a birthday card to Sophie's address when it was quite obviously intended to go somewhere else? What kind of father would cheat his own daughter of a birthday card by purposefully sending it astray? How could it be the easiest way? And above all, how was she supposed to trace this Hilda person? So now Sophie had another problem to worry about. She tried to get her thoughts in order. This afternoon, in the space of 2 short hours, she had been presented with three problems. The first problem was who had put the two white envelopes in her mailbox? The second was the difficult questions these letters contained. The third problem was who Hilda Moller Nag could be, and why Sophie had been sent her birthday card. She was sure that the three problems were interconnected in some way. They had to be because until today she had lived a perfectly ordinary life. Is that the first chapter done?
yeah.
Okay.
So this is the end of the first chapter. So maybe we'll pause for about 5 minutes to see
Hmm.
how beautiful the introduction itself is. Go ahead.
Yeah. So by the way, Vishwa,
Yeah,
hello.
please. Yeah,
It's
I'm here.
Hilde. Okay. It's
Hilde,
Hilde.
okay. Hilde. Yeah, I've heard both pronunciations. Yeah,
Hmm.
but I'd like to just see how bold this author is. She straight away gets to the
Hmm.
point, basically, right?
Yep.
There's no beating around the bush.
That's the
The first
beauty.
question, first question itself is a dhamaka question, basically, right? You can
That's
spend a
why. That's
lifetime
why
just on
this
the
book
question.
is marvelous, now.
Yeah, right. I mean, and I like the way I actually like this kind of an introduction to kids who are of a particular age, basically, right? Maybe 14 is early, and obviously this girl, Sophie, seems to be in this day and age probably a little bit mature beyond her years, right? because you pose a question to a 14-year-old person nowadays and they may not even be interested in it, right? But this kid is thoughtful and she latched onto it, right? She's already analyzing it beyond a certain point, you know. But kids are not too immature to face these kinds of big questions when the age is right, basically, right? And it's a great question. Who are you? And more importantly, where did the world come from, right?
Okay.
And she's already gone to that logic where the whole creationism or something created the world kind of a logic has this what they call there is a phrase for it. I forget what it's called. It's called the infinite the infinite dependency paradox or something like that, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah, this came from that, that came from this, but at some point in time, and that is the title of the chapter itself, right?
Mm,
Something must have come from nothing, basically, you know,
yep.
because if you if you assume that nothing
Hen and
existed at
egg.
some point, go ahead. Sorry.
Hen. Hen and egg paradox.
Yeah, exactly.
Who came first?
Yeah. What came first? Who came first? And at some point in time, something must have come from nothing, basically, right? And that is one of philosophy's biggest questions. And even science is uh, grappling with the same question, basically, you know. So they said Big Bang, then they said suddenly everything came into existence, but they realized that there is a point in time, assuming that time is linear, where that singularity of time occurs when time itself did not exist at some point in time, right? And how did all this suddenly come into being, you know? So anyway, I think we have another half an hour, so probably we can complete one more chapter, SKR, if you're up for it.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, let's go to the next chapter.
Okay. The second chapter, the top hat. So,
Hello.
hey,
Yeah, yeah, go ahead.
go ahead, Taoji.
No, I want to. Am I audible?
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah,
No, I wanted to like take your focus to one line.
yeah,
Uh,
please go ahead. Yeah, I think now he's not
you
audible.
remember?
Yeah, yeah, now,
Hello.
oh, please
Am
repeat
I audible?
yourself. Now you're audible. Please go ahead, repeat yourself, please. Thank you.
No. So when Sophie said, "Na kitty, kitty, kitty,"
Correct.
when she calls her kitty. Okay. So after that, after that, there's a phrase. As she stood outside on the gravel path with the mysterious letter in her hand, the strangest feeling come over her. She felt like a doll that had suddenly been brought into life by the wave of magic wand. Okay,
Correct.
so I want the listeners and all of us to remember this line. Okay, for rest of the book.
Okay.
Okay,
Yeah,
no, so
sounds
it
good.
is not a spoiler. So if anybody
No, no, no
thinking it's
problem.
a
I
spoiler,
mean, it definitely seems a little bit sudden and out of place also,
yeah.
you know.
Because when
The
I first
top,
read this book now,
uh,
from that day till now, it's underlined in my book. Uh, when you started reading here, na, I opened my book. So that's why I said let's go by that.
sure, sure, absolutely. No,
I'm reading in my hard copy.
sounds good. Yeah. All right,
Okay,
please, please
let's go
proceed.
for the
Yeah,
second chapter.
yeah. Second chapter.
Okay. Second chapter, the top hat. So the caption is, the only thing we require to be good philosophers is the faculty of wonder. Okay. Sophie was sure she would hear from the anonymous letter writer again. She decided not to tell anyone about the letters for the time being. At school, she had trouble concentrating on what the teachers said. They seemed to talk only about unimportant things. Why couldn't they talk about what a human being is, or about what the world is and how it came into being? For the first time, she began to feel that at school, as well as everywhere else, people were only concerned with trivialities. There were major problems that needed to be solved. Did anybody have answers to these questions? Sophie felt that thinking about them was more important than memorizing irregular verbs. When the bell rang after their last class, she left the school so fast that Joanna had to run to catch up with her. After a while, Joanna said, "Do you want to play cards this evening?" Sophie shrugged her shoulders. "I'm not that interested in card games anymore." Joanna looked surprised. "You're not? Let's play badminton then." Sophie started down Sophie stared down at the pavement, then up at her friend. "I don't think I'm that interested in badminton either." Then her friend was like, "You're kidding." Sophie noticed the touch of bitterness in John's tone. "Do you mind telling me what's suddenly so important?" Sophie just shook her head. "It's a secret." Then Joanna is like, "Yuck, you're probably in love." The two girls walked on for a while without saying anything. When they got to the soccer field, Joanna said, "I'm going across the field." Across the field, it was the quickest way for Joanna, but she only went that way when she had to hurry home in time for visitors or a dental appointment. Sophie regretted having been mean to her. But what else could she have said? That she had suddenly become so engrossed in who she was and where the world came from that she had no time to play badminton? Would Joanna have understood? Why was it so difficult to be absorbed in the most vital and, in a way, the most natural of all questions? She felt her heart beating faster as she opened the mailbox. At first, she found only a letter from the bank and some big brown envelopes for her mother. Done. Sophie had been looking forward to getting another letter from the unknown sender. As she closed the gate behind her, she noticed her own name on one of the big envelopes. Turning it over, she saw written on the back, "Course in Philosophy, handle with care." Sophie ran up the gravel path and flung her school bag onto the step. Stuffing the other letters under the doormat, she ran around into the back garden and sought refuge in the den. This was
Refuge,
the
refuge.
refuge. Okay. This was the only place to open the big letter. Sherekan, the cat. It came jumping after her, but Sophie had to put up with that. She knew the cat would not give her away. Inside the envelope, there were three typewritten pages held together with a paper clip. Sophie began to read. Okay. What is philosophy? Dear Sophie, lots of people have hobbies. Some people collect old coins or foreign stamps, some do needlework, others spend most of their spare time on a particular sport. A lot of people enjoy reading, but reading tastes differ widely. Some people only read newspapers or comics, some like reading novels, while others prefer books on astronomy, wildlife, or technological discoveries. If I happen to be interested in horses or precious stones, I cannot expect everyone else to share my enthusiasm. If I watch all the sports programs on TV with great pleasure, I must put up with the fact that other people find sports boring. Is there nothing that interests us at all? Oh, us all. Okay. Is there nothing that interests us all? Is there nothing that concerns everyone, no matter who they are or where they live in the world? Yes, dear Sophie, there are questions that certainly should interest everyone. They are precisely the questions this course is about. What is the most important thing in life? If we ask someone living on the edge of starvation, the answer is food. If we ask someone dying of cold, the answer is warmth. If we put the same question to someone who feels lonely and isolated, the answer will probably be the company of other people. But when these basic needs have been satisfied, will there still be something that everybody needs? Philosophers think so. They believe that man cannot live by bread alone. Of course, everyone needs food and everyone needs love and care. But there is something else apart from that, which everyone needs, and that is to figure out who we are and why we are here. Being interested in why we are here is not a casual interest like collecting stamps. People who ask such questions are taking part in a debate that has gone on as long as man has lived on this planet. How the universe, the earth, and life came into being is a bigger and more important question than who won the most gold medals in the last Olympics. The best way of approaching philosophy is to ask a few philosophical questions. Who was the world uh, How was the world created? Is there any will or meaning behind what happens? Is there a life after death? How can we answer these questions? And most important, how ought we to live? People have been asking these questions throughout the ages. We know of no culture which has not concerned itself with what man is and where the world came from. Basically, there are not many philosophical questions to ask. We have already asked some of the most important ones, but history presents us with many different answers to each question. So, it is easier to ask philosophical questions than to answer them. Today, Today as well, each individual has to discover his own answer to these same questions. You cannot find out whether there is God or whether there is life after death by looking in an encyclopedia. Nor does the encyclopedia tell us how we ought to live. However, reading what other people have believed can help us formulate our own view of life. Philosophers' search for the truth resembles a detective story. Some think Anderson was the murderer, others think it was Nelson or Jensen. The police are sometimes able to solve a real crime, but it is equally possible that they never get to the bottom of it, although there is a solution somewhere. So, even if it is difficult to answer a question, there may be one and only one right answer. Either there is a kind of existence after death or there is not. A lot of age old enigmas have now been explained by science. What the dark side of the moon looks like was once shrouded in mystery. It was not the kind of thing that could be solved by discussion, it was left to the imagination of the individual. But today we know exactly what the dark side of the moon looks like, and no one can believe any longer in the man in the moon or that moon is made of green cheese. A Greek philosopher who lived more than 2000 years ago believed that philosophy had its origin in man's sense of wonder. Man thought it was so astonishing to be alive that philosophical questions arose of their own accord. It is like watching a magic trick. We cannot understand how it is done. So we ask, how can the magician change a couple of white silk scarves into live rabbit? A lot of people experience the world with the same incredulity. What is that, Vishwagaru?
Yeah, incredulity.
Ante?
And what incredulity means, with the same disbelief.
Oh, okay. Okay. A lot of people experience the world with the same incredulity as when a magician suddenly pulls a rabbit out of a hat which has just been shown to them empty. In the case of the rabbit, we know the magician has tricked us. What we like what we would like to know is just how he did it. But when it comes to the world, it's somewhat different. We know that the world is not all sleight of hand and deception because here
Sleight, sleight of
slight.
hand.
Ante?
Sleight of hand means hand. Um, it's a quickness of hand. It's like a magic that is
Oh,
done with the
magic.
hand.
Like
Yeah, like making a ring disappear, or
like
yeah,
chitkalo kind of.
yeah, sleight of hand.
Okay. We know that the world is not all sleight of hand and deception, but here we are in it. We are part of it. Actually, we are the white rabbit being pulled out of the hat. The only difference between us and the white rabbit is that the rabbit doesn't realize it is taking part in a magic trick, unlike us. We feel we are part of something mysterious and we would like to know how it all works. P.S. As far as the white rabbit is concerned, it might be better to compare it with the whole universe. We who live here are microscopic insects existing deep down in the rabbit's fur. But philosophers are always trying to climb up the fine hairs of the fur in order to stare right into the magician's eyes. Are you still there, Sophie? To be continued. Okay, so that's what was in the 3-page letter that she received. Okay, Sophie was completely exhausted. Still there? She couldn't even remember if she had taken the time to breathe while she read. Who had brought this letter? It couldn't be the same person who had sent the birthday card to Hilda Moller Nag, because that card had both a stamp and a postmark. The brown envelope had been delivered by hand to the mailbox exactly like the two white ones. Sophie looked at her watch. It was a quarter to 3. Her mother would not be home from work for over 2 hours. Sophie crawled out into the garden again and ran to the mailbox. Perhaps there was another letter. She found one more brown envelope with her name on it. This time she looked all around, but there was nobody inside. Sophie ran to the edge of woods and looked down the path. No one was there. Suddenly she thought she heard a twig snap deep in the woods. But she was not completely sure, and anyway, it would be pointless to chase after someone who was determined to get away. Sophie let herself into the house. She ran upstairs to her room and took out a big cookie tin full of pretty stones. She emptied the stones onto the floor and put both large envelopes into the tin. Then she hurried out into the garden again, holding the tin securely with both hands. Before she went, she put some food out for Sherekan. Kitty, kitty, kitty. Once back in the den, she opened the second brown envelope and drew out the new typewritten pages. She began to read. Okay, now this letter. A strange creature. Hello again. As you see, this short course in philosophy will come in handy sized portions. Here are few more introductory remarks. Did I say that the only thing we require to be good philosophers is the faculty of wonder? If I did not, I say it now. Okay. The only thing we require to be good philosophers is the faculty of wonder. Babies have this faculty. That is not surprising. After a few short months in the womb, they slip out into a brand new reality. But as they grow up, the faculty of wonder seems to diminish. Why is this? Do you know? If a newborn baby could talk, it would probably say something about what an extraordinary world it had come into. We see how it looks around and reaches out in curiosity to everything it sees. As words are gradually acquired, the child looks up and says, wow, wow, every time it sees a dog. It jumps up and down in its stroller, waving its arms. Wow, 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 wow. We who are older and wiser may feel somewhat exhausted by the child's enthusiasm. All right, it's a wow, wow. We say unimpressed. Please sit still. We are not enthralled. We have seen a dog before. This rapturous performance may repeat itself hundreds of times before the child learns to pass a dog without going crazy, or an elephant, or a hippopotamus. But long before the child learns to talk properly, and ion, before it learns to think philosophically, the world we have become a habit. A pity, if you ask me. My concern is that you do not grow up to be one of those people who take the world for granted, Sophie dear. So, just to make sure, we are going to do a couple of experiments in thought before we begin on the course itself. Imagine that one day you are out for a walk in the woods. Suddenly, you see a small spaceship on the path in front of you. A tiny Martian climbs out of the spaceship and stands on the ground looking up at you. What would you think? Never mind, it's not important. But have you ever given any thought to the fact that you are a Martian yourself? It is obviously unlikely that you will ever stumble upon a creature from another planet. We do not even know that there is life on other planets. But you might stumble upon yourself one day. You might suddenly stop short and see yourself in a completely new light on just such a walk in the woods. I'm an extraordinary being, you think. I'm a mysterious creature. You feel as if you are
Creature అండి. Creature.
creature.
Creature. Yeah.
Mm, Adi. Okay. Creature. Okay, I'm a mysterious creature. You feel as if you are waking from an enchanted slumber. Who am I, you ask? You know that you are stumbling around on a planet in the universe. But what is the universe? If you discover yourself in this manner, you will have discovered something as mysterious as the Martian we just mentioned. Is it Martian or Martian?
Martian is correct.
Martian, okay. You'll not only have seen a being from outer space, you'll feel deep down that you are yourself an extraordinary being. Do you follow me, Sophie? Let's do another experiment in thought. One morning, mom, dad, and little Thomas, aged 2 or 3, are having breakfast in the kitchen. After a while, mom gets up and goes over to the kitchen sink, and yes, dad flies up and floats around under the ceiling while Thomas sits watching. What do you think Thomas says? Perhaps he points up at his father and says, Daddy's flying. Thomas will certainly be astonished, but then he very often is. Dad does so many strange things that this business of little flight over the breakfast table makes no difference to him. Every day, Dad shaves with a funny machine. Sometimes he climbs onto the roof and turns the TV aerial, or else he sticks his head under the hood of the car and comes up black in the face. Now it's mom's turn. She hears what Thomas says and turns around abruptly. How do you think she reacts to the sight of dad floating non non challenge
Nonchalantly.
ante
Nonchalantly means without
with
having
no support?
any, without making a big deal about it.
Oh, okay.
Nonchalant means just doing it as if it's routine.
Oh, it's normal. Okay. Hmm.
Yeah.
How do you think mom reacts to the sight of dad floating nonchalantly over the kitchen table? She drops the jam jar on the floor and screams with fright. She may even need medical attention once dad has returned respectably to his chair. He should have learned better table manners by now. Why do you think Thomas and his mother react so differently? It it all has to do with habit. Note this. Mom has learned that people cannot fly. Thomas has not. He still isn't certain what you can and cannot do in this world. But what about the world itself, Sophie? Do you think it can do what it does? The world is also floating in space. Sadly, it is not only the force of gravity we get used to as we grow up. The world itself becomes a habit in no time at all. It seems as if, in the process of growing up, we lose the ability to wonder about the world. And in doing so, we lose something central, something philosophers try to restore. For somewhere inside ourselves, something tells us that life is a huge mystery. This is something we once experienced long before we learned to think the thought. To be more precise, although philosophical questions concern us all, we do not all become philosophers. For various reasons, most people get so caught up in everyday affairs that their astonishment at the world gets pushed into the background. They crawl deep into the rabbit's fur, snuggle down comfortably, and stay there for the rest of their lives. To children, the world and everything in it is new, something that gives rise to astonishment. It is not like it's not like that for adults. Most adults accept the world as a matter of course. This is precisely where philosophers are a notable exception. A philosopher never gets quite used to the world. To him or her, the world continues to seem a bit unreasonable, bewildering, even enigmatic. Philosophers and small children thus have an important faculty in common. You might say that throughout his life, a philosopher remains as thick skinned as a child. So now you must choose, Sophie. Are you a child who has not yet become world weary? Or are you a philosopher who will vow never to become so? If you just shake your head, not recognizing yourself as either a child or a philosopher, then you have gotten so used to the world that it no longer astonishes you. Watch out, you're on thin ice. And this is why you are receiving this course in philosophy just in case. I'll not allow you, of all people, to join the ranks of apathetic and the indifferent. I want you to have an inquiring mind. The whole course is free of charge, so you get no money back if you do not complete it. If you choose to break off the course, you're free to do so. In that case, you must leave a message for me in the mailbox. A live frog would be eminently suitable, something green at least, otherwise, the mailman might get scared. To summarize briefly, a white rabbit is pulled out of a top hat because it is an extremely large rabbit. The trick makes many billions of years. All mortals are born at the very tip of the rabbit's fine hairs, where they are in a position to wonder at the impossibility of the trick. But as they grow older, they work themselves ever deeper into the fur, and there they stay. They become so comfortable they never risk crawling back up the fragile hairs again. Only philosophers embark on this perilous. Okay.
Yeah, perilous. Perilous means dangerous.
Dangerous, okay. Only philosophers embark on this perilous expedition to the outermost reaches of language and existence. Some of them fall off, but others cling on desperately. Okay, others cling on desperately and yell at the people nestling deep in the snug softness, stuffing themselves with delicious food and drink. Ladies and gentlemen, they yell, we are floating in space, but none of the people down there care. What a bunch of troublemakers, they say. And they keep on chatting. Would you pass the butter, please? How much have our stocks risen today? What is the price of tomatoes? Have you heard that Princess Diana, I think, is expecting again? Okay, I think that's the end of the letter, okay? When Sophie's mother got home later that afternoon, Sophie was practically in shock. The tin containing the letters from the mysterious philosopher was safely hidden in the den. Sophie had tried to start her homework but could only sit thinking about what she had read. She had never thought so hard before. She was no longer a child, but she wasn't really grown up either. Sophie realized that she had already begun to crawl down into the cozy rabbit's fur, the very same rabbit that had been pulled from the top hat of the universe. But the philosopher had stopped her. He, or was it a she, had grabbed her by the back of the neck and pulled her up again to the tip of the fur where she had played as a child. And there, on the outermost tips of the fine hairs, she was once again seeing the world as if for the very first time. The philosopher had rescued her, no doubt about it. The unknown letter writer had saved her from the triviality of everyday existence. When mom got home at 5 o'clock, Sophie dragged her into the living room and pushed her into an armchair. Mom, don't you think it's astonishing to be alive? She began. Her mother was so surprised that she didn't answer at first. Sophie was usually doing her homework when she got home. I suppose I do sometimes, Mom said. Sometimes? Yes, but don't you think it's astonishing that the world exists at all? Now, look, Sophie, stop talking like that. Why? Perhaps you think the world is quite normal? Well, isn't it? More or less, anyway. Sophie saw that the philosopher was right. Grown ups took the world for granted. They had let themselves be lulled into the enchanted sleep of their humdrum existence once and for all. You have just grown so used to the world that nothing surprises you anymore, is what Sophie said to her mom. Okay. So, mom says, what on earth are you talking about? Sophie says, I'm talking about you getting so used to everything, totally dim, in other words. Mom says, I'll not be spoken to like that, Sophie. Sophie says, all right, I'll put it another way. You have made yourself comfortable deep down in the fur of a white rabbit that is being pulled out of the universe's top hat right now. And in a minute, you'll put the potatoes on. Then you'll read the paper. And after half an hour's nap, you'll watch the news on TV. An anxious expression came over her mother's face. She did indeed go into the kitchen and put the potatoes on. After a while, she came back into the living room, and this time it was she who pushed Sophie into an armchair. Okay. There is something I must talk to you about, she began. Sophie could tell by her voice that it was something serious. You haven't gotten yourself mixed up with drugs, have you, dear? Like mom was asking. Okay. Sophie was just about to laugh and okay, but she understood why the question was being brought up now. Are you nuts? She said. That only makes you duller. No more was said that evening about either drugs or white rabbits.
And
End of second chapter.
that brings us to the end of chapter 2, basically.
Hmm.
It's a beautiful chapter.
Lovely.
Yeah. So basically, the main questions are already posed, definitions are given.
Hmm. And and I think now you got it by its 14-year-old child being asked these questions.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, that was the reason because they are not in as deep as us now in 25, 50 or 60 years old. She's in between. She can ask these questions. That's why.
Yeah. There's still some time.
Yeah, yeah, she has because after a point now after 18 or I would not say 18. It's different in every place, but after a certain point you develop some certain ideas that you hold on to it. Like this is
Correct.
true, this is true, this is true. As the age of 20, like 12 to 14, 15, you don't have those ideas. Like you have, but not concrete as 18.
Yeah.
That
See,
can be
there are some
challenged.
expectations as you age that at some point you will become independent. And when those responsibilities start piling up, you are forced to accept a few things, basically, right? You can be a philosopher at heart, but you
Hmm.
have to contend with the realities of being on your own and taking on responsibilities, right?
Hmm.
And not everybody has the luxury of not doing anything and living in the world of questions.
Yeah, that's why I say, like, not I say, it's just a code that philosophy is a like business of those person their belly is full, like those people whose
Yeah,
belly is full.
yeah,
Like it's not a hungry man job.
correct.
I have a story for this also. Can I?
Yep.
So there was like 8 or 10 philosophers sitting in a room. Okay, so in the night time, and they were discussing something, and there was his servant whose house that was. So he came and gave them drinks and all, and it was night time. So the master said, "Come after this candle like goes out, okay, and serve again and light the candles again, okay." So he goes and he sleep for some time, and he come back and he sees discussion is still on. After that, he lights the candle and go on. When the morning happen, like it's 4 a.m. or 6 a.m., then he wake up and go on again, and still discussion is being held. And after some point, they go outside, all the people. And after that, when master is alone, the servant asks, "What were you discussing, sir? May I ask?" So the master said, "We were discussing that how many teeth horse have. We were discussing that." So like servant said, "Wow, this this is very easy. I can go outside and count the teeth of the horse. It's not the big deal for me. I can do that." Okay, so master says, "You okay? Answer me first. Your belly is full?" So he said, "Yes." "Have you eaten?" "Yes." "Have you slept well?" Said, "Yes, master." Okay. So then you cannot answer these questions because you need to think about these things first. Okay. We are not having discussion that like how many teeth have horse. Like we need to decide first which horse is the ideal horse, so we can count him as perfect horse. Then we will count. We need to first decide which horse we took from which country, which area, which breed. We need to discuss that first. After that, the counting part comes. So we were discussing that. You will not understand these questions. You just here to survive, and we are here to discuss. Like I cannot translate it fully, but it was like कि अभी तुम ये सवाल नहीं समझोगे क्योंकि अभी तुमको अपनी रोटी पानी की चिंता है. जब
Right,
इन
right.
चिंताओं से ऊपर उठ जाओगे तब समझोगे.
Uh, yeah, totally. All right. Anything else, SK garu, Shavan garu?
I don't have anything to say, sir.
Yeah,
It's just the first and second chapter. Maybe
right.
in the
There's a
next
lot more to
episodes, I
come.
think I can. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. All
So answer these questions only, Sarvan Garu.
right. What's there to answer?
And these are the questions which nobody has got answers to. That's the real.
So
That's
who
the
are
only
you?
ultimate reality.
Who are you? Who are you, Sarvan Garu?
That's why people have died searching for it. I
Correct.
don't know. Even they got the answer.
Yeah.
Like Ramana
Uh,
Maharshi, he
yeah,
asked you, "Who
exactly.
are you?"
Correct.
I don't know. Yes, reached this
Uh,
knowledge.
who are you is the Western question. Who am I is the
Yeah,
Indian
who
student.
am I? It's ultimately the
Right.
same thing.
Yeah, it's ultimately same
Hey,
thing.
the letter,
I have no answer.
the
That's why
letter
I'm
said, "Who
asking
are
him.
you?" The letter said, "Who are you?" So that means the girl has to question, "Who am I?"
Correct.
Ultimately, it's the same
Yeah.
search.
Yeah. Hmm.
So you
I
guys
want to
like the
hear what
questions?
yeah, I want to hear what SK garu has to say after the first two chapters.
A very interesting premise. Bhavani. I liked it.
Yeah, and the English is not too complicated. So that is the best part.
Yeah.
It's Hindi is very complicated. If you buy the Hindi version, na,
Yeah.
you will get many strong words.
Okay. So it's very sort of probably Indianized a little bit more. That's why our own philosophical questions are also mixed in.
No, no, no. Just the translation.
Okay.
The translation part was very like I would say good, but in that way.
Okay. I think he dropped. The voice got cut.
No, it's there, but the voice
Oh
is an
Voice.
issue today.
Yeah. Now we can hear him. Yeah.
no, no. My voice and my network is like he's in like it always happen.
Hmm.
I gone out three or four times, na,
Yeah.
between the call. Very sad. I was saying that the Hindi language, na, they translated in very like literature way, so it's
I see.
little
I
bit
see.
hard to. Yeah, they didn't made like Indian philosophy into it, but they just translated it very well, so well that like normal people would hard like face hardship to understand it.
Got it.
Oh, yeah,
All right. Sir, we can probably end the session.
Yeah.
yeah.
All right. Thanks to all the viewers. Thanks to all the panelists. So we're going to close the session today. I'll also give my voice a little bit of rest. Then hopefully
Okay.
we'll continue next week.